All right. So if you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order, Mr. Chair, we're ready.
Call the meeting to order and do roll, please.
All right. So we'll do the roll call. Again, I will do that, and starting with chair and vice chair. So we go by alphabetical order. So please be ready to unmute your microphones because we need to hear from you. All right. So Mayor Margot.
Present.
State Rep Lino Ortega.
Present.
Mayor Antonio Araujo. State Rep Cesar Blanco.
Present.
Senator Joseph Cervantes, excuse me. Trent Doolittle.
Present.
State Rep Art Fierro.
Present.
State Rep Mary Gonzalez. State Rep Mary Gonzalez. All right. City Manager Tommy Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. Yvette Hernandez.
Present.
State Rep Raimundo Lara. All right. Commissioner Carlos Leon.
Present.
Mayor Manuel Leos.
Present.
Okay. Representative Cece Lizárraga.
Present.
Right. Chuck McMahon.
Present.
Alderman Walter Miller. Alderman Walter Miller.
He just showed up. He's in the lobby.
I think he just came in.
Oh, okay. All right. State Rep Joe Moody.
Present.
Thank you. Representative Sam Morgan.
Present.
Alderman Esteban Olivas. Okay. Norma Palacios.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Javier Perea.
Present.
Thank you. Representative Henry Rivera.
Present.
Thank you. State Senator Jose Rodriguez. Okay. Representative Rene Rodriguez. Okay. Sam Rodriguez.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Benjamin Romero. Okay. Judge Ricardo Samaniego.
Present.
Thank you. Ellen Smythe.
Present.
Thank you. Tomas Trevino.
I'm present, Eduardo.
Great, thank you. And Mayor Diana Trujillo. Mayor Diana Trujillo. Okay.
Excuse me,
All right.
Executive Director,
I
can you
missed my
please
name.
call Mary Gonzalez again?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, great, thank you.
Eduardo,
All right, so-
Walter's here too.
Great, thank you. So Mayor, we do have quorum.
Okay. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Marisol, do we have anybody for public comment? Marisol?
No, we don't.
Great,
Okay,
All right,
let's,
thank you.
we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 23rd, 2020 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Mr. Miller, second.
All right. Any further
Sorry.
discussion?
who was a motion? I'm
Rivera,
sorry.
Rep Rivera.
Okay,
Okay. If there's
Got
no
it.
further discussion, those who disapprove of this motion, please say. Motion passes unanimously.
Right.
Let's move on to number 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 2 is approve the following task orders pursuant to the terms and conditions of the master agreement with the University of Texas at El Paso and to authorize the executive director to execute each of the task orders, including any additional documents or materials as may be required. A, pursuant to task order number 2, UTEP will provide to the El Paso MPO data collection and analysis services related to the congestion management process EMP in an amount not to exceed $6,443 in fiscal year 2021. B, pursuant to task order number 3, UTEP will update the multimodal web tool with newly available 2019 data in an amount not to exceed $72,014 in fiscal year 21 and $13,619 in fiscal year 22. C, pursuant to task order number 4, UTEP will develop for the El Paso MPO an interactive transportation improvement program TIP web application in amounts not to exceed $76,560 in fiscal year 21, $103,336 in fiscal year 22, and $16,691 in fiscal year 2023. And Mr. Chair, these are items that we tabled last month, just so that everybody's aware that we're now bringing them back to you for action.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion, Lizarraga, motion to approve.
Second,
Martin
Velasquez.
Morgan.
Okay, since we've discussed these before, unless there are any questions, anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Item number 3 is to approve amendments to the Title VI program to incorporate recommendations from the Federal Transit Administration, FTA. Again, Mr. Chair, this is an item that we tabled last month. Unfortunately, we're going to ask well, instead of tabling, we will ask to delete this item and we will bring it back to you when we are ready. The reason that we're asking to delete at this time is that there's still some analysis that needs to be done that we're coordinating with the FTA. It's not a big deal. You know, we work with them. We're on time. We will be submitting a draft with pending the final analysis that is still missing. But we will bring it back to you as soon as we're ready. Very likely in December, which is the meeting. I believe it's on the 11th of December.
Is there a motion to delete?
Motion to delete, Rivera.
Second, Miller.
Morgan.
All right. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 4.
Thank you. Item 4 is to approve amendments to the fiscal years 2020 and 2021 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, to program additional statewide planning and research SPR funds from New Mexico DOT, to move funds between UPWP tasks 2, 3, and 4 to accommodate the work to be performed by the University of Texas at El Paso, and to program additional FTA 5307 funds for Sun Metro activities. With this, Mayor, we do have a presentation.
Let's go ahead and do the motion and then we'll do the presentation.
Motion to approve, Rivera. Motion to approve, Rivera.
Is there a second?
Second, Representative Ortega.
Okay, let's do the presentation.
All right, so Georgie Nostroza will present here to explain the changes. So George, you're on.
Hello, my name is George Nostroza, MPO Program Administrator. The MPO seeks your approval to amend the FFY 2021 Unified Planning. Next slide, please. The Unified Planning Work Program is a 2-year budget and statement of activities to be carried out in the El Paso MPO planning area. Is required by the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administrations as part of their authorized funding to us. The UPWP describes the work to be performed by the MPO, the products expected, cost of the work, and recognizes the sources of funding. Next slide, please. The UPWP budget and activities are separated into 5 major tasks and separated further into subtasks. The task 1 is for administration, example salaries and public participation. Task 2 is for data development, such as GIS. Task 3 is for short-range planning. Task 4 is for long-range planning, transportation modeling, and air quality. And task 5 is reserved for special studies. Next. So the 3 changes we are proposing is first, to add New Mexico statewide planning research, a new source of funds. The second change is to reallocate Texas planning funds. And third, Sun Metro is increasing their budgeted funding. The total effect is to increase FY21 UPWP funding by $719,049. Next. For amendment number 1, here we see the notice to proceed letter provided by NMDOT awarding the El Paso MPO $399,729 in state planning and research funds for the EPMPO 2050 travel demand model, which is being allocated to task 4, regional transportation modeling. Next. For amendment 2, since the NMSPR funding just discussed was allocated to task 4, this frees up task 4 in our Texas FY21 grants to help fund the UTEP task orders approved. $93,999 in Texas funds will be reallocated to task 2, $96,000 reallocated to task 3. Next. Finally, Sun Metro is increasing 2021 funding allocations reported in the UPWP to more closely mirror their actual expenditures. The total FTA 5307 increase is $319,320. And there's a breakout of the 4 tasks that are being increased. Next. Okay, so shown here is the budget summary for the current UPWP, highlighting current FY21 Texas funding and boxed Sun Metro funding. If you notice at the far left, the funding is segregated by rows into the 5 UPWP tasks. At the bottom in bulleted notes are the changes we are implementing. The black bullet indicates that Texas 2021 funding will remain unchanged. Funds are only being reallocated. The blue bullet points to the Sun Metro total that will increase to $943,430. The red bullet and arrow points to the New Mexico statewide planning and research funding that will be added in a new column. Finally, at the rightmost column, the total current UPWP budget of $5.4 million is shown. Next. This slide with the proposed changes shows that the Texas total has remained unchanged. Sun Metro increased to $943,430. And NMSPR column for $399,729 has been added for a total net increase of $719,049. Next. So to recap the changes, we added NMSPR funding, increased Sun Metro funding, and our total UPWP increased from $5.4 million to a new grand total of $6,191,207. Next. So we're open for questions and comments if there are any.
Any questions? Okay, then let's vote.
Mayor, if I may be, there are no questions, but I do want to just say that we are very, very excited and grateful to New Mexico DOT for the award of these SPR funds. Those are funds that are competitive throughout the state. You know, every state DOT has access to their own SPR funds, but So we thought it would be a good opportunity, and it almost $400,000 of funds, half of the cost of the travel demand model expenditures. So that we had plenty of money to do the TDM work, but this allows us to free up money to do other things. So we really are thankful to the DOT for providing those funds, and again gives us an opportunity to do more things.
That's tremendous. So let's vote. Any opposed to this motion? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Let's go to number 5.
Thank you, Mayor. So items 5 and 6 are recommendations that came from TPAC. What I'll do, Mayor, is read the whole item number 5, all items A through G, and then I'll turn it over to TPAC Chair Greg McNichol. So discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to 5, amend Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP, amended Destino 2045 MTP, Destino 2019 to 2023 Transportation Improvement Program TIP, and Destino 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program TIP 2A. Program Rio Grande Trail Phase 1 project using Transportation Alternatives Program TAP and Category 3 local contribution funds in fiscal year 2021. B, Program Rio Grande Trail Phase 2 project using Transportation Alternatives Program TAP and Category 3 local contribution funds in fiscal year 2022. C, amend the US 54 Patriot Freeway main lanes, Kenworthy to FM 2529 and ramp reconfiguration to move from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 25. D, amend the I-10 widening East Lake to FM 1281 to move from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. E, amend the Loop 375 Purple Heart widening and construction of frontage roads to move from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. F, amend the I-10 widening 0.22 miles west of FM 1905 to State Highway 20 to move from fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 22. And G, amend the I-10 interchange at Pendale, Lee Trevino to FM 659 to move from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. So TPAC Chair Greg McNichol, you're on.
Well, let's do the motion first, and then Greg can present.
Sorry.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve, Rivera.
Second, Morgan.
Palacios.
Okay. All right, Greg, go ahead.
Right. Yes, Greg McNichol, Chair of the TPAC. These 7 items can kind of be broken into 3 groups. The first of those groups is items A and B in this group, which is obviously adding a program, the transportation alternative programs, both in fiscal year 21 and 22, to the Destino and the TIP, both versions of those. I'll explain that in a minute. The second grouping is amending the US 54. It's item C and item G. These are moving 2 projects out of the TIP. This is something TxDOT requested. Deals with deals with being physically constrained. And there was a review done, and TxDOT can explain on this, or Waldo, on the need to do this was, again, dealing with making sure that the TIP is physically constrained. And so those 2 projects are moving out into outside the TIP. The last group, D, E, and F, are amending these 3 projects, moving them, for the most part, 1 year. This allows for TxDOT to better manage the letting schedule on these 3 projects, and they're only that was represented to us that they're only moving them a few months so they can better manage, like I said, letting these 3 projects out. Are there any other questions?
Any questions of Greg, or does TxDOT want to comment?
Right, much like Greg mentioned, for the record, Tomas Trevino, TxDOT District Engineer, El Paso. For the record, like Greg mentioned, we've got 2 exercises. One is a physically constrained exercise. We are currently over programmed by $6 billion across the state in a 4-year STIP. So, we've moved couple of the jobs in the MPO area back to 2025. The other one is the balanced letting. As a state, we try to keep our letting volumes to about $6 billion a year, which requires us to let about $500 million every month. Currently, we're programmed to let about $8 billion in 2021. So we're moving a couple of jobs back from August to October letting, one from August to October, the other one from August to November, and then the other one further back in the letting in 2022. So again, that's the balanced letting initiative, like Greg mentioned.
Thanks, Tomas. Any questions from our members? Okay, then we'll vote. Anyone opposed to this? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Let's go to number 6.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 6, amend the amended Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP and Destino 2021-2024 Transportation Improvement Program TIP to A, program the Booth Road Widening Operational Improvements Project using Border State Infrastructure SIB funds in fiscal year 2022. B, amend the Bicycle Infrastructure Citywide Project to change limits in fiscal year 2021. C, amend the New Mexico 404 widening project to reduce state legislative funds, increase National Highway Performance Program NHPP funds, increase Surface Transportation Program SDP large urban funds, increase STP flex funds, and increase Border State Infrastructure SBSI funds in fiscal year 22. D, the program Lisa Drive Connectivity Project LDCP Construction Phase 1 using County Transportation Alternative Program TAP funds in fiscal year 21. And E, the program Lisa Drive Connectivity Project LDCP Construction Phase 2 using county TAP funds in fiscal year 22. Again, TPAC Chair McNichol.
Well, let's do the motion first. Is
Sorry.
there a motion to approve?
Lizarraga, motion to approve.
Second, Palacios.
Okay, let's have the presentation.
Yes, these 5 items actually are going to sound very familiar to you because you approved a version of them last month. In the course of MPO's review, just to remind everybody, we have 2 Destino 2045 plans. We've got the one that's been approved and one that's in the amendment phase. It's not yet been approved by the federal authorities, but it's in the process. And the same thing goes that we're also working through 2 TIPs. We have one that's the 2019-2023 TIP and the 21 through 24 TIP. And so to make sure that all the projects have the proper approvals, we want to be sure to come take this back to y'all for approval in a very similar way that we did with item number 5 above, where we had to make reference to both the 2045 Destino and the 2045 amended Destino. Okay, so this is kind of a housekeeping item for you. And this is what item 6 is really. So these are items that you approved last month under the Destino 45, and we're asking you to do the amended Destino 25, and then in a fashion on the TIP. Last month you approved it under the 2019-23 TIP. This month the 21-24 TIP. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. Any opposed? Anyone opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Go to your reports.
Thank you, Mayor. So item 7 is a Regional Mobility Strategy RMS 2020 project development. This is the monthly report. Again, it's the information is in your backup material. There's really not a lot to say other than looks like every project is moving. I mean, clearly the amendments that you approved on item number 5 will be reflected. But in general terms, the concern obviously, or the the heightened alert is really for the projects that are scheduled to lead in 21 and 22. So, we're still working with all the partners, whether these are local government projects or TxDOT projects, to make sure that they're moving and that we can meet the letting dates. So happy to entertain any questions that you may have regarding the RMS 2020 report. All right. Mayor, can we move to item 8? Well, I'm sorry, Mayor, can we move to item 8?
Yeah, I thought you'd move automatically since there was no motion to approve.
Okay, we'll do. All right, so item 8 is the RMS 2050 travel demand model update. Salvador Gonzalez, Guru, and well, take it from there, Sal.
Good morning, everybody. Salvador Gonzalez Ayala, El Paso MPO. This is our monthly report on the progress of the development of the new travel demand model. Briefly, just let you know that we are wrapping up the element, the demographic forecast element. We finished the 2017 base year, and so we are, and we'll show you in a moment what we've obtain the information that we've so far developed for the forecast. And also we are in the process of actually validating, calibrating and validating the model for the 2017. So for the details, we have Sean McAtee from Cambridge Systematics as well on the meeting. So I'll let him give the details. Go ahead, Sean.
Wonderful. Thank you, Salvador, for the introductions. And thank you, everyone, for having me here today. If you can move to the next slide, this will just show a quick outline. We'll talk about 3 things. Mainly, we want to focus on the demographic forecasts. We'll talk a little bit about the mode choice, transit, and active transportation models, and then just briefly talk about our current status and next steps. If you can look at the next slide, this will show you the regional control totals that we've been building. And Eduardo and Salvador asked if we could talk a little bit about some of the differences between this new model and the Destino model. As you can see here on the top chart, we are showing a slower growth rate in population between now and 2040 and then 2050 than was assumed in the Destino model. On the other hand, the employment growth rates are staying about the same. This information has been developed in collaboration with the Texas Demographic Center, so it's a very well vetted data set. It's based on the current conditions, current economic forecasts, and those experts who have helped us build the regional control totals. If you move to the next slide, this will show you how we're looking at population growth by some of the subregions. We had a Delphi process recently that had about 50 participants, looked at where we expected population and employment growth to happen. We wanted to present to this group some information about how the growth by subregion differs from the Destino model, again, so that as people start to see results from this new model, there can be an understanding that there are some differences in forecasts that have been developed through this process. Things to note here, in particular, we have a lower population growth rate in the Northeast Central subregion in particular. Some others have differences as well that you can see on this chart. If you look at the next map, this will show you the employment growth by subregion. Similar concepts. Again, we had a new Delphi panel who really looked at the current conditions, so we do see some differences in growth expectations. The one that stands out here would be that Far East subregion where we really didn't see much forecast employment growth in the Destino model, but our new RMS 2050 employment projections are considerably higher. This caused a little bit of concern at first, but we've reviewed the information. We've looked at things like the balance of jobs to employment in this region in the forecast, and we're comfortable that this is just showing an area that doesn't have a lot there now, but is expected to grow in the future. The next plot here on the next slide will show our existing conditions with population and jobs. This slide here has some kind of faint blue dots for 100 population or 100 people in an area, and a faint red dot for 100 jobs. And if the person running the slideshow can just flip back and forth a few times between this slide and the next slide, you'll be able to see visually where growth is expected to happen according to our forecast process. Here, those darker blue dots and darker red dots show those future jobs and future people or future population that we expect based on the Delphi process, followed by a technical exercise that brought those subregional totals down to a more localized level. Here you can see there's quite a bit of growth expected out in that far east subregion, as well as the Waco Tanks subregion, Mission Valley, some growth in the Northeast Central and all of the other subregions as well. And this map here is really the map that we want to make sure people see, have a chance to think about, and even potentially provide some feedback on. Does anything on this map look different than you might have expected? Are we showing not enough growth in somewhere according to anyone's knowledge, expectations, or are we showing too much growth in some areas? This will really drive the travel demand modeling, and that means it will really drive a lot of the forecasting, which leads into alternatives analysis and project selection for that RMS 2050 plan. If you move on to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our next topic, which is the mode choice model. The mode choice model, if folks on this call are familiar, it allows us to look at travel, and it takes this process beyond just looking at moving cars, and it focuses on moving people. So we have three different primary modes: auto, transit, and active transportation. The auto mode might be a drive alone or a carpool. Transit might be walk or drive, walk access to transit or drive access to transit. And then active transportation would be bike and walk modes. Through this process, we are updating the non-motorized capabilities, so we'll have a better model when it comes to those walk and bike trips. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. We also are improving the model's ability to be calibrated to things like income and auto availability. We've obtained some additional data and some additional information that we're able to build into that model and better represent how different people in the region are able to travel and how they prefer to travel. And then finally on this slide, I want to talk a little bit about market segmentation. We may have presented a little bit of this information in the past, where we have taken the model and improved its ability to understand difference in walk distance. This model uses some large zones in some cases that might be a half mile or mile square, but we know that sometimes those zones have a concentration of density near a transit stop. So we've improved the model's ability to understand and reflect that densification near transit stops. So as transit-oriented development is built or planned or even exists, the model's better able to understand how people who live in those denser areas and maybe work in areas that have more density can access transit and how they travel. The next slide will show you a little bit about the non-motorized model and how we've improved that. For the first time here in El Paso, we've updated the non-motorized model to take into account the infrastructure available to bicycles in particular. You'll see on the left, we have a picture of a street that isn't really a great place to bike, but bikes are allowed. Very dedicated bikers might still be willing to do it. You may be sharing the road with traffic. It's a little bit less comfortable. As we move to the right, we get something like a bikeable shoulder, a little bit narrow, but at least some separation, or a sharo, which is really indicating that bikes are encouraged and allowed here, even if you are sharing that lane with traffic. Moving to the next slide, next couple of images here on this slide. Sorry, didn't mean to prematurely move to the next slide there. We have a bike lane where we've got a wider, more comfortable area for bicyclists to use our facilities. And then finally, a bike trail or multi-use path. Why is this important? Well, now with the travel model, we can look at these different types of treatments, and we've worked with NPO staff to identify where these different types of treatments exist, and we can better understand where bikes prefer to ride. And more importantly, as we get into forecasting and planning, we can start to look at the relative benefits of improving the bicycle infrastructure in one place versus another. If we now move on to the next slide, here we'll see a little bit about, I guess I should say, my caveats on non-motorized modeling. Non-motorized travel is largely land use driven. Infrastructure is important, but if you put a lot of bike paths in an area where there's no density, you're going to have considerably less bike use of those. So land use is an important part of the discussion here. And I also want to make sure that as this model is being used as a tool in the future, anybody who's asking a question of the model knows there are some limitations. The model is designed here to evaluate different options and see which one might be better. The model isn't going to tell you if you build a bike lane, you're going to get 423 new bikes or 105 new bikes on it. It's not to that level of detail due to the very localized nature of bicycle travel. And an important reason for that is that we model day-to-day utilitarian travel. People who are commuting to work on a bike or running an errand or shopping or visiting a friend on a bike. It doesn't include recreational travel, people who are just going out to have a bike ride for the sake of riding the bike. So we just want to keep that in mind, that we only capture some of that very important non-motorized activity. If you'll move on to the next slide, I believe this is my last slide here. This just talks a little bit about our status and current activities. As Salvador mentioned earlier, we do have a fully functioning model in place, and we're currently in the process of validating that model, making sure that it represents our existing conditions on the ground. We're doing that this month. That is targeting us for model runs ready to begin in December to support development of the transportation. And that's the presentation I have. Happy to turn it back to Salvador or others if there's an opportunity for questions.
Yes, thank you, Sean. I guess, well, first of all, we wanted to show you where we're at, but I guess more importantly, we wanted to share the element of the forecast of demographics and allow for some feedback, which doesn't have to be just today, perhaps in the next coming days, perhaps next week, because the process now is, as you saw in these slides, Sean's team is populating those sub areas, and now they are in the process of populating actual traffic analysis zones, which are more disaggregated. And so this is an important moment for anybody, although we already went through the Delphi. If anybody has additional comments on where, if you know, where the growth is going, and you know, we can take any of those comments and see if we can accommodate or adjust. So with that, I'll open for any comments or questions.
Thank you. I'd like to make sure that all of us receive a copy of this presentation.
Very well, very well. I'll make sure of that.
Okay, and does anyone else have any questions? Any members?
Mayor, this is Eduardo. I mean, if nobody else has questions, I do have several comments and questions that I'd like to make.
Absolutely, go.
So, guys, can you go back to the map showing the bright blue and red dots? That exactly. That is one of the critical elements. And as the consultant team was developing the demographics, or well, actually putting together the results of the Delphi process, and many of you board members and TPAC members participated in that Delphi process. You know, nobody has a crystal ball, right? You know, this is our best guess, but it did show some things that popped up, like Sean described, you know, that increase for the same year, but going from one plan to another, showing a dramatic increase in employment in the Far East. For example, that really, you know, catches your attention. Not to say that it's not going to happen, but I think we need to have a good explanation of why from one plan to the other, you know, we're showing such a dramatic change. And what is important to note or to emphasize is that this is, like Sean said, this is the basis of our travel demand model. And once we start running the model and looking at congestion, we don't want to artificially look at areas that are going to suffer tremendous congestion, or that we're forecasting tremendous congestion if it's not really going to happen, right? So you see that cluster of bright red dots along Montana Avenue there on the Hueco Tanks area. That's an area that is projected to grow, but perhaps that growth is focused too much on that small area, right? And generating artificially more congestion, and that may happen. And the same goes for the I-10 just east of Loop 375. That quadrant that shows a lot of growth, and definitely, yeah, that area is growing pretty quickly. So my point here is that we have to make sure that we get our demographic forecast, do the best job that we can. It's not wishful thinking, but it's more like what is more likely to happen, and because that's going to be the basis of our forecast and all the work that we do as we run the travel demand model to the future. So that's one comment. And Sean and Salvador, I don't know if you want to say something more about that.
I will add that TxDOT is actually reviewing this. They also have highly specialized technical people looking into what the Destino developed, some a set of additional reports that were done over the past 2 or 3 years on that, and so that's also being considered as part of this. I just wanted to mention it.
And that's a very important point. I mean, this is such an important piece that we're having more sets of eyes look at this, because again, we have to do our best to get it right. Again, these are forecasts, and until somebody invents a crystal ball, right? But we really want to make sure that this is as close as we can to get the likeliest scenario as far as demographic projections.
Through the chair,
Well,
I'd like
go
to
ahead,
ask
Walter.
a question.
Go ahead.
Eduardo, I know that when we participated in the Delphi process and everything else, this was all more or less, well, it wasn't empirical data. Is there any way you can use empirical data to kind of back any of this up, or does it exist, or do we have the funding to try to look at actually what's on the ground, or are we just still going to do it from a bird's eye view here? In other words, you seem to question the fact whether this these two plans. You seem to question whether the Delphi process was that information was going to pan out. Is there any way we can do a little more work and get actual data instead of opinion?
Well, okay, so the actual data is really current data, right? So we definitely, for current the current situation, and Sean, you can take over here, but our starting point is what we have today, right? And that is real data, right? So like, for example, the 2017 base year for the travel demand model is based on existing data, on traffic counts, and a lot of new data that is coming in through cell phone data, location-based services, and Sean can talk a little bit more about that. Now, the forecast of the future, again, there is no, I mean, we can do all sorts of other analysis like regression analysis and stuff like that to look at trends, and I think that's also part of what the Cambridge team is doing in looking at each individual traffic analysis zone and see how it grows, right? But again, the Delphi process is based on consensus, right? That's why you get different people with different of different fields and areas of expertise and all that, and it's consensus. I'm not doubting it. I'm just saying that it's not a perfect process either, right? And if there is something that changes dramatically, I think we need to understand it, right? And again, adjust it accordingly.
And
yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add before I let Sean talk that as part of the process, satellite imagery was looked at more detail at the TAC level between 2015, 2017, and 2019. And the idea was to see how specific or smaller areas grew, and if that showed actually some trends. So that's part also of the process. Not just opinions, which are really important, but also what are the trends specifically by each of the sub areas and TACs. So Sean, I know you want to add to that.
Sure. Yeah, and Eduardo is exactly right that we have lots of good data about what is on the ground today, but we also have good data that has been used in this process about zoning, about where we know that land is owned by developers. We included utility company representatives from utilities in the Delphi process. They have a better understanding of where utility capacity will allow for more growth. So we tried to take expert opinions into account, and we've merged that with data that we have available. And that's how we have gone from this sub-region level down to the TAZ level. And the big challenge, of course, is that we don't know if somebody will buy a part of, some land somewhere and really be excited about developing it that we didn't anticipate. And we don't know if maybe a landowner will go bankrupt and not develop something that we do anticipate. But we have tried to take into account the best available data and expert knowledge to come up with what we feel is converging on the most likely situation for growth between now and 2020.
Does that cover it, Walter?
Yeah, I was just a little concerned about the way Eduardo expressed it was that there was apparently this difference in the two study or the two plans, and I don't know. It just concerned me a little bit that we don't have it quite down yet. And like I said, we don't want to get it wrong.
Alderman Miller, I apologize if it's certainly not casting doubts or anything. It's just that anytime we do any type of forecasting, even though we do have some sophisticated tools and all that, but it's again until somebody invents a crystal ball, we don't know the exact answer, right? So, but yeah. So I just want to make sure that we get it right. Let me give you another example. For example, in the current travel demand model, the one that we're using which is a 2045 Destino, at the time there was a lot of discussion and excitement about the potential development of the Fort Bliss properties that are going to be turned over to different people. The area east of Global Reach, south of Spur 601, west of Blue 375, and north of Montana, all that area, where there's plans for a EPCC campus, commercial development, etc. So even though those plans may still pan out, but I think the current model overestimated that growth. And again, we have more information now, and we're very careful to try to get it right this time for that particular area. Not to say that it's not going to happen, right? But that same lesson, we want to make sure that we don't do the same thing for other areas, right? Try to distribute it and avoid creating those potential hotspots, so that our forecasts are a little more accurate. But again, I don't want to cast any doubt on the process of what we did. Like Sean explained, the Delphi process. We brought people from experts from different areas and different fields and degrees of expertise. And you know, it's a great process, but it's not a perfect process. I just want to make sure that all these, you know, differences are explained.
We are looking at significant growth on the west side of Global Reach, or east side of Global Reach.
Right.
That's where TJX is going to go, and there are other opportunities on expansion there. Sam Rodriguez, are you on? Where are we on the east side master plan completion?
Mayor, Mr. Chairman, we've wrapped up the needs analysis and have identified where the service gaps are for the city. And that will be presented to City Council in the very near future. And then after that, we're going to be looking at policy recommendations to allow for those services to be set up for the city, including the transportation network as well. We'll be happy to share that with the MPO. I believe there's been meetings with the MPO on that as well.
Yeah, Eduardo, you all ought to see that once it's complete. I mean, I was driving out on the east side. It's another city on the far east side.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely. And again, you know, this is how everything complements each other. You know, the travel demand model is designed to be more of a regional model, as you well know. But then we do need a lot of these more localized studies, like the study that the city is doing on the east side. You know, TxDOT, for example, does a lot of these corridor studies along the, you know, the major arterials. All those studies that focus more on a specific area within the MPO region are tremendously important for us. And that helps us, you know, feed the process better so that we can identify better solutions, better projects to address these issues. So absolutely, it's something that the MPO is very interested in working with the city on these studies.
Okay.
Question, sir. Question.
Mr. McNichol, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I did want to add just that during the TPAC meeting, we had a lot of discussion over this too, and looking at the areas. One of the areas that hasn't been a lot of discussion yet this morning that we may need to look at is Santa Teresa, and what the impact of the rail yard that's over there that was in New Mexico, and in 2050, what is Mexico going to do about potentially realigning that crossing that currently is downtown El Paso? Does it move out to Santa Teresa, and what would that area look like? So then it's more looking out to that 2050 area. So I just wanted to add that comment to y'all for consideration.
Representative Rivera, do you have a question?
Yes, sir, I did. Mr. Calvo, on the presentation with the forecast and all, it's great information, but with all these forecasts and analysis being done, does the MPO plan to have a plan in place to expand these roads prior to any build or businesses or residential areas actually coming into the locations that are being analyzed right now?
Well, actually, part of the planning process is, you know, for us to develop this tool, we develop our forecast, and then we run the model in the future to see where potential congestion, you know, could occur. And as we do that with all the partnering agencies, you know, the two DOTs, you know, the city of El Paso, the county, everybody, then, you know, we collectively we identify those and start developing the solutions for them, right? So if we expect that there's going to be a lot of congestion, let's say on the eastern part of our MPO region, you know, east of Loop 375, well, you know, we should be preparing ourselves, you know, developing projects to be, you know, implemented or going to construction in the future. So
I guess that's the question I'm asking for, because generally what happens is that the expansion goes in after businesses and residential areas have developed, inconveniencing those that are already there instead of doing it prior so that no one is inconvenienced. Right. And the cities can also develop alternative routes to exit the area instead of the main road being Montana or Saragossa, etc.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, that's the use of this model of, you know, this and other models. I mean, to help us anticipate where growth is going to happen, so that when it does happen, we're prepared to implement the solutions that will address that, whether it's a new roadway, whether it's public transportation, or whatever it is. That's the theory of it. But the point that you raise is also one that MPOs and anywhere in the country somehow complain about, is that how important the relationship is between land use and transportation. So us here at the MPO, and most of the MPOs, I mean, we don't control land use. We have no say in land use. Land use is a function more of the local governments, right? So we're trying to get a much better understanding of land use and incorporate land use into transportation and link them directly as we do our forecast. But given that we do not control it, well, sometimes we're at, I don't want to say that we're at the mercy of what happens, right? Because we do want to anticipate it, but we have very little control of that. So that's a complaint that you will hear from almost every MPO in the country, of the inability to have more to say on land use.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Eduardo, to that point, the East Side study that we launched was centered on that very fact, on city and county planning and what we were looking at in terms of growth, because that does impact the transportation. We have a lot of donuts right outside city limits that people think they live in the city and they don't. It's in the county, or it's in our ETJ, and it's causing a lot of planning issues. And I think that that's what's causing a lot of the congestion, causing a lot of the problems with traffic. In all the other cities I've been in, the ETJ and county, the ETJ area and the city's planning in that area and the county's efforts were always on the same page. So that's what we're working on, trying to get that study back and make sure we make recommendations on land use that doesn't further exacerbate an already existing problem. So to your point, the data is only as good as it is, as how we look at it today. And in terms of the forecast, it's based on projections, based on land use projections. And I think that Delphi and whoever else and MPO that look at these analyses, they have to take into consideration the land use. And we're happy to share the East Side Regional plan with y'all. And I think that y'all should also get the land use documents from the county as well, because that will impact the synergy or lack thereof with the other cities in the county and just the county proper, and what goes out in those developments. Because if the developers go out and build density in those areas, that's a no-go. I mean, that's just poor planning. You go to any city, any county in the state of Texas or anywhere, and you shouldn't have density in the county area. You should have more sparsely developed areas, and you can't have that as a benchmark or something that you do on that end of it, because then it does impact the way development occurs in the ETJ, in the city limits, and in the county.
I would add or ask if this is Alvaro Gonzalez, MPO, if we can have those plans or land use structures as soon as possible to try and see if we incorporate it into our forecast.
I'll have Sam Rodriguez make sure that he gets the East Side plan to y'all, and also he can get in touch with Philip Edaway, our planning director, to get you those documents as well. I would encourage you to do the same with the county, because again, if one's not doing the same as the other, it's going to really trip up the growth patterns of transportation networks.
Right. Yeah.
And the same goes for the other municipalities as well, because it's, the Horizon City has their own development plan or comprehensive plan, and the city of Socorro, I know, has done that too. So yeah, we need to coordinate with everybody. But then at the end of the day, what we need to do is, when we develop our forecast, is try to get the most likely scenario, may not be the desirable one, but because then you open it up for opinions, right? What is desirable, but we have to focus on getting the most likely, whether we like it or not.
All right, good discussion. Any other questions? Okay, let's move to number 9.
All right, thank you, Mary. So item 9 is a project call for the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Alternatives TA set aside program for fiscal years 23 and 24. Brian Miskman from MPO staff will give the presentation.
Good morning, board members. Again, Brian Miskman, El Paso MPO. This is just a follow-up on our call for projects. On August 3rd, 2020, the El Paso MPO announced a call for projects under its TASA program for fiscal years 23 and 24. Approximately $1,398,351 was available for each fiscal year. During TPAC, we were able to get an ad hoc committee together. We did receive 7 applications. The ad hoc committee did meet earlier this week. We were able to score the projects, and we'll be bringing that forward at next month's Transportation Policy Board. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, let's move on to number 10.
Thank you.
Right. Item 10 is a project call for the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization Federal Transit Administration FTA Section 5310 for fiscal years 2020-2021. So Gabby Lopez from MPO staff will present this.
Good morning. Following the same format as the Transportation Alternatives Set Aside, we had the call for projects for our FDA 5310 program. The call for projects opened on August 3rd and closed on October 23rd. And we are currently now waiting for the ad hoc committee meeting. We have scheduled it for this upcoming Monday, November 16th. So once we meet with the ad hoc committee, they'll go ahead and score the applications, and we will be providing they will be providing a recommendation for our upcoming TPAC and TPB meetings. So in the upcoming meetings, we will go ahead and present the projects that will be programmed into our documents.
Any questions? Don't hear anything. Let's get to your report, Eduardo.
All right. Item 11 is the Executive Director's report. Mr. Chair, I do have just 4 brief items that I wanted to report on, starting with the BTAC meeting, the Border Trade Advisory Committee. BTAC has been meeting a lot in this past year, and mostly to be like the steering committee for the Border Master Plan, that text that is developing for the entire border region between Texas and the 4 Mexican states of Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas. So we are at the final stage of the first phase of Border Master Plan, which is really leading to identifying key projects on both sides of the border and somehow finding a way of prioritizing them and identifying the needs and all that. But one of the really, really important things that this Border Master Plan is doing is that getting a real deep dive into the importance of the border region as far as trade and as far as economic activity. People, especially for us here in El Paso and Juarez, being the largest area. And this really, we all should use it, the Border Master Plan and that data, to make sure that the people outside of the border understand the importance of cross-border movement of people and goods. Some of the statistics that are being gathered and analyzed, are tremendous. So as all of us go and have conversations at different levels with other state or federal agencies in terms of looking for funding for our projects. Again, this Border Master Plan is going to give us a lot of really good information, good data to help us with that. Several of you have attended some of the BTAC meetings, so I don't know if any of you board members have any comments or would like to say anything to regarding BTAC.
Eduardo, I'd like to ask a question if I might.
Sure, Alderman.
Through the mayor, through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Walter, excuse me.
And this kind of relates back to the last presentation. We were talking about the population densities and such. I believe in the last BTEC meeting, they presented on perhaps the state of Chihuahua's efforts to reactivate the planned connections from the Chihuahua Highway, both to Santa Teresa and to the Tornillo Port of Entry. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, they did report that actually at the federal level, SST, they report that they are working on getting a concessionaire to build and operate that highway. So that would be the connection connecting Samalayuca, which is the highway that comes from Chihuahua City north into Juarez. In Samalayuca, build a bypass leading directly to the Tornillo Guadalupe area and to the port of entry.
Okay, so understanding that and that's been on the books for a while, and apparently they're just now reactivating that. How would that your previous map on not only population density but jobs density, and would you expect that those two ports of entries, increased entry and increased interest in those 2 ports of entry because of the action by Mexico, would that not be something to add to your density map?
Well, and I'll let Salvador and I don't know if Sean is still on the line, but definitely they play a role. All of the border crossings leading into our MPO region are considered external stations, right? So yeah, if we do see that there is something happening, substantive on the Mexican side, those flows that come into our region, definitely, we would analyze them and see how they would change, right? Go ahead, Sal.
Yes, I would add that the port of entries were part of the constraints and opportunities mentioned as part of the Delphi. Both Tornillo and Santa Teresa were part of this as well. And in addition to that, we've been getting all of the information on the Mexican side about their plans, their demographics, current demographics, as we have for El Paso, but also their future plans and their project and forecast as well. So yeah, all of that is being part of this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Go ahead and continue.
Again, I don't know if anybody else has wants to say something about the BTAC meetings, the process, those that have participated in the meetings. All right, if not, then let me move to the other committee that is managed by TxDOT at the state level, which is a Freight Advisory Committee meeting. We as a region and mainly through the Chamber of Commerce, they nominated a new member to be an official member of that Freight Advisory Committee meeting, and that's VJ Smith from Marathon to sit in the committee. This Freight Advisory Committee meeting is tremendously important as well because at the state level, they make recommendations to TxDOT on how to improve the movement of freight within the state. And at this past meeting that happened last week, that they had a very interesting study for the Permian Basin, and that was conducted. And again, the same idea. They're highlighting how the Permian Basin is so important for the state of Texas, and how important it is to fund highway improvements and transportation improvements, not just highway, but in their case, it's mostly highways. For that area. They also showcased a study that was done for the Rio Grande Valley. Same idea, very similar to the Border Master Plan, but specifically for that region, and highlighting the importance of the Rio Grande Valley and the role of transportation. And it's all about, seeking funding. So we definitely need to do something like that for our region, maybe through the Freight Advisory Committee meeting, but that's why we need more active participation there. So just a brief comment on that, and for those that, even though, like in my case, I'm not an official member of that committee as I am for BTAC, but participating and being there and showing up for El Paso is very important, like you've heard me say many times. So that's a freight advisory. The next comment that I'd like to make is deals with the Texas Transportation Commission meeting that happened yesterday. They had a very good and extensive presentation on the Ports to Plains corridor study. Again, another study that they're doing, highlighting the importance of that corridor, from the ports in the Rio Grande Valley and Laredo, leading towards Lubbock and Amarillo, going through Midland. A lot of interest and a lot of even political power behind that study, and stating a lot of recommendations for improvements to existing facilities, extending I-27, for example, between Lubbock and Amarillo, or upgrading and stuff like that. And again, I'm just thinking, well, where is El Paso? We need something like that to highlight, showcase how important our region is. The I-10 corridor, east-west, and highlighting how important it is to keep that partnership with the states of California, Arizona, and New Mexico, because it's such an important trade corridor. And of course, like we were saying before, all the stuff that crosses from Ciudad Juarez to El Paso eventually gets on I-10, whatever is moved by trucks. So another call for action. We need to make sure that we get a study like that for our region. And,
Walter,
and then,
excuse me, Eduardo, I think Walter
Sure.
has his hand up. Do you have a question, Walter? Walter Miller?
I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand off a while ago. I
Okay.
apologize.
All right. Okay. Go ahead, Eduardo.
right. And
I
then
do,
the other,
Rivera has a question, sir.
Oh, Representative Rivera.
Yes, sir. Mr. Calvo, why hasn't the study that was done by Mr. Coronado and presented to the MPO and the city, county, and the city government, as well as county, that he's done? It's an excellent presentation. Why can't we start with that if you're calling for action to be taken? I mean, this should already be in place, knowing that we're one of the largest border cities
right.
in here. I mean, why do I don't understand what you're saying. We're called to action if that was an excellent data-driven report that he did.
Absolutely, absolutely, and David has presented that. A lot of kudos, to the city of El Paso and for having this the International Bridges Steering Committee. Now, I have to say that at the state level, that has been recognized as a tremendously important and useful effort. The fact that to have agencies on both sides of the border, we've got CBP and aduanas. We have law enforcement from the U.S. side and law enforcement from the Mexican side, bridge operators. The city started this, but of course the city has brought in the county to include Tornillo, Guadalupe, and even an invitation to bring the Santa Teresa folks as well. As an MPO, of course, we look at this all regionally, but you're Rivera, David has presented that to the BTAC, and then David was also part of the panel at the last week's Freight Advisory Committee meeting. What I'm saying is that just like that, we need to speak up more and get more of this information out, to the decision makers in the state when we're looking for funding. So you're absolutely right. And David has done a great job in presenting both to BTEC and to the Freight Advisory Committee, but we need more than that.
Tommy Gonzalez has a question. If yours has been answered, Henry. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Tommy?
Mine is more of a comment, Mr. Mayor. The Ports to Plains Corridor Coalition was set up in 1998. It's been around for 22 years. And the purpose of it was to extend I-27 south and I-27 north. Now it's connected all the way to Canada. And at the time, it was connected all the way to Laredo and Del Rio, and then Laredo, Ciudad de Acuña on the other side of Del Rio, and Nuevo Laredo on the other side of Laredo as well. So it included Mexico also. I mention that because what Mr. Rivera was asking about, I think that what Eduardo is talking about, Mr. Rivera, he's talking about a transportation corridor coalition. The chamber has put together a mobility coalition, and what I had shared with them is my previous work with the Ports to Plains Corridor Coalition that Randy Nagelbauer and I initiated in Lubbock in 1998. And I did it for like 6 years, and then I handed it over and went back to the city. I was a loaned executive for that time, and I was also doing deputy city manager work at the city of Lubbock, in addition to doing the Ports to Plains initiative. We put it together because we wanted to get on the map. You had the I-35 coalition. It was called NASCO, North American Superhighway Coalition. You had the I-69 coalition. You also had MOTRAN, La Entrada al Pacífico with Midland, Odessa. And so we wanted to have some attention paid to the Panhandle, and we really felt like I-27 just stops. It's just from Lubbock to Amarillo. It's an interstate, and there's no more interstate. So we wanted it to quack like a duck. So we started pushing the idea of going 2-lane to 4-lane, divided where it wasn't divided, so it could look like an interstate. And so we got a national corridor designation. We got over $250 million from the Texas Trunk System. We served on that committee on the Texas Trunk System and the trunk system was to go from 2-lane to 4-lane highway divided, but it did not have those not reliever routes, but it didn't have those routes. What do they call it, Eduardo, on the side?
You mean frontage roads?
Frontage roads, yeah. It didn't have frontage roads. It was just 2-lane to 4-lane. That's what the Texas Trunk System had. So it was set up again for attention getting, to get money, to get corridor designation. We had a national corridor designation at the federal level, and we also have dues that are paid, and they still have dues that are paid. At the time when I left it, we had over $500,000 in dues that we were collecting on an annual basis, or something to that effect. And then we were using that for matching dollars for studies. We were using that to advocate and to lobby at the state and federal level. And as Eduardo has been trying to talk to the MPO about, is that we need to all kind of talk with one voice in Austin. And if we created an I-10 corridor coalition, we wouldn't necessarily take attention away from El Paso. We would actually have more power. We would be able to have a bigger voice. And obviously we would be advocating for the whole corridor, but we would have other partners there with us. And obviously we would be pushing the programs or projects in our area. So we've already done some analysis for the chamber and for the MPO, the city has. We've broken down the route and the route and all the cities and counties along the route that would pay their fair share of whatever the amount would be that we would go after in terms of dues. You would have chambers of commerce that could be involved. You could have economic development corporations that could be involved. That's how we got to the numbers that we got to with the Ports to Plains Coalition. We originally just started with cities and counties, and then we added chambers, and then we added economic development corporations. Once they saw the value, once they saw the development value and the fact that it was bringing in more highway construction, and then when you have highway construction, you have more development. So we were all advocating with one voice, but we would then all advocate for our respective projects. And that's what Eduardo is talking about that we don't do. We just simply, when we go to Austin, it's just about El Paso. And when we talk about El Paso, we've been in the past, and I don't want to say something, I don't want to push the big elephant down or anything like that. And but there has been disagreements in the past in the MPO, and that's because we don't get a lot of money, and so we're jockeying for position with one another for those dollars. And we really need to look at making the pie bigger. So that we all have dollars for the projects that we need in our respective areas. So I believe that's what Eduardo was talking about, that we need a corridor coalition. Is that what you were referring to, Eduardo?
Absolutely, and I hope we're recording this because you just laid it out exactly. Exactly what I feel we need to do. It's all about competing well for funding because we compete all the time. We compete against the other metropolitan areas. We compete against the other border regions. We compete against other quarters, and we've got to do our due diligence and do the analysis, but at the same time go out and be vocal, but with that common message, consistent message. But thanks so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Gonzalez, for laying it out. That's exactly what I wanted to say, but you laid it out perfectly.
Yes, sir. And I think just for the board members, it's a sophisticated advocacy approach is what it is. And it's not new. We just haven't done it. As I said about Lubbock, they did it 22 years ago. So
Right.
we're behind, and we all need to come together and increase the size of the pie so that we are playing with everyone else is getting those big dollars. And the thing about I-10, it's got some big cities on the corridor, some big cities. And so we would be able to partner with larger cities even than ours, and be able to get a lot of attention, not only at the state level, but at the federal level.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much again for that those words, Mr. Gonzalez. Again, that's right on the money.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Calvo.
Thank you. The last item, also related to yesterday's Texas Transportation Commission meeting, was an item that was related to El Paso, obviously, and it had to do with the Lincoln Center. So the commission had an item to approve an agreement, a lease agreement for a nonprofit agency here in El Paso to lease the Lincoln Center. And there were several people that spoke there. Former Rep Joe Pickett, and I know Representative Cesar Blanco was there too. They spoke about the history of the Lincoln Center, the importance of the Lincoln Center from a cultural and community perspective. My comments were more related to the project development aspect of that, how TxDOT really worked very, very hard with the community to find a good solution for the current project that is currently under construction. I mean, no question that the I-10 Connect is a tremendously important project for us. Building those new connections to improve the mobility between I-10, US 54, Loop 375, the border highway, and improving the access to the Bridge of the Americas as well. But when the project development activities began, the Lincoln Center became a center of controversy, and so my comments were really to highlight how well the process worked in order to find, develop multiple alternatives and then find the best alternative that actually, met the need, without compromising the engineering aspect, the traffic and the mobility aspects, but also working, on a solution to keep the Lincoln Center there. So now, if this nonprofit is willing to take over, I think it's a great story, turning a controversial issue into a win-win situation. So with that, I know Representative Blanco, you were there. I don't know if you want to say anything about that too.
Thank you, Eduardo. No, I just, we, as Eduardo indicated, we had focused a lot on the cultural aspect of it. There's still another step in the process. The federal government has to approve this project as well. So we're going to be waiting for them. It doesn't take, according to TxDOT, it won't take very much time to do that. So we'll be standing by to see what the federal government. But overall, good project, good cause, and I think it's moving along well. Thank you, Eduardo.
Okay. Great.
Anything else?
That's it. That's it. Just a reminder to everybody that the next meeting, we will have training again starting at 8:30. And of course, you all noticed that we changed our platform. We're having the TPB meeting today in Microsoft Teams instead of WebEx. I think it's working out better. We're having less feedback issues and all that. So that's it for me, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
All right, unless anybody else has anything to talk about, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Lizarraga.
Second, Blanco.
Okay. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned.